not a 201, it's a little bit like a 301 class on the topic of Shiva-tattva. Some time ago, a couple months ago, I contacted P.R.E. Mohan, who's the president, with an idea of visiting this weekend. I didn't know at the time. He looked on his calendar and said, "Oh, Shivaratri, great." So since that time, I've been thinking, what would be a nice topic or two to present about Lord Shiva and Shivaratri. So I kind of just got in a groove and started digging and researching, and I spent about 30 hours putting this together, so it's very comprehensive and a little complex. So if you get restless, part of the plan is we'll break halfway through and have Kirtan, that someone's bringing musical instruments, and we'll have Kirtan for a while. And then part two. That's how I see how this might. Some people will come fashionably late. You know how it happens. Yeah, on purpose. But you're all on time, so I thank you for being on time. I'm going to start with this verse here, which is the first verse of Sri Brahma Samhita. And we can chant responsively. It's a nice verse. Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchit Ananda Vigraha Anadir Adir Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam. So the last line, Sarva Karana Karanam, this is a verse glorifying, or it's the invocation verse for the whole of Brahma Samhita, addressing Govinda as the Sarva Karana Karanam, the cause of all causes. And he has no beginning, but he's the beginning of everything else. Anadir Adir Govinda, Sarva Karana Karanam. And the first part, he has a spiritual form, a vigraha, that's made of eternity, knowledge, and bliss. And he's the Parama Ishvara. Here's Prabhupada's translation, or Bhaktisiddhanta's translation. Krishna, who is known as Govinda, is the supreme Godhead. He has an eternal blissful spiritual body. He is the origin of all. He has no other origin, and he is the prime cause of all causes. There's a nice technical term, a little technical, Paribhasha Sutra. Paribhasha means it's like the essential sutra, little short statement, a phrase like Vedanta Sutra. So it's a terse, compact little statement that governs all of the other verses of the entire work. Generally, Paribhasa Sutra comes towards the beginning. This case is the very first verse. Pari means around, and Bhasha means speech or language. So Paribhasha is to fully speak or to explain or define. It's the governing verse and governing the entire rest of the writing. So in Brahma Samhita, this is Lord Brahma expressing his mature realizations after receiving from within his heart Krishna's revelations of the Vedas. It's his expression, his own personal expression. And in this, there are some verses that are specifically dealing with Lord Shiva. So as we're going through this, and it's speaking about Lord Shiva, the Paribhasha Sutra is important to remember. It's the governing verse, and of all Ishwaras, he's the Parama, the supreme Ishvara. And Lord Shiva is definitely Ishvara, but he's subordinate Ishvara, and Krishna is Parama Ishvara. Some of you may not be familiar with well, let's ask it. Are you aware of who the 6 Goswamis are? We'll say it negatively. Anyone not aware of who the 6 Goswamis are? 6 Goswamis, okay. 6 Goswamis, they're personalities who are the next, chronologically, next in line from Lord Chaitanya. In 2 weeks, we'll be observing the appearance day of Lord Chaitanya. So it's a very important, it's next to Janmashtami. It's the most important day in our lives, in our calendar each year. Lord Chaitanya, simple way, is Krishna himself teaching the means of achieving perfection for the sage, namely Nam Sankirtan. There's a much longer version to explain who was Lord Chaitanya, but those who are his followers accept, based upon scriptural statements, Krishna comes once in the day of Brahma. How long is the day of Brahma? A lot of zeros at the end. 1,000 yuga cycles. 1,000, so add 3 zeros to a yuga cycle. And each yuga cycle is 4,320,000,000 years. Times 1,000. That's it. That's one day of Brahma. So Krishna comes once in the day of Brahma. It's very specific. He comes during the 7th Manu, because there's 14 Manus. And he comes in the 28th Yuga cycle during his reign as Manu. And just after Krishna departs, in that same once in a day of Brahma, Krishna comes to teach what Krishna taught in the how-to manual. So let's do it this way. One of the essential ways that Krishna came to deliver Dharma was speaking Bhagavad Gita. And the conclusion of Bhagavad Gita, 1866, many of you may know that verse, Sarva Dharmam Parityaja Mam Ekam Sharanam Braja. In the verse, that's the conclusion of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is saying, many teachings I've given you, I've come to give Dharma. Of all these teachings of Dharma that I've given, they're all subordinate to one thing. Mam Ekam Sharanam. Unto me alone. Eka. Mam Ekam Sharanam. So it's the teaching of taking full shelter in service unto Krishna. That's the conclusion of Bhagavad Gita. Krishna departed. After Krishna departed, he began to consider. In this age of Kali, it follows right after my departure, and people in this age, everything goes down. Compassion goes down, duration of life goes down, memory goes down, everything goes down, good character goes down. So it's going to be very difficult for people to understand and to apply my teaching, this Sarva Dharmam Parityaja Mam Ekam Sharanam. So how are they going to do it? I'll come myself and teach how to do it. So there's scriptural references indicating Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Krishna. Without all the scriptural references, he's Krishna himself in the mood of his own devotee. He comes as a devotee of Krishna to teach how to surrender to Krishna. It's a how-to teacher. And one of the essential ways of how-to is the chanting of the holy name. Many scriptural references to that, towards that end also. So when he comes, Lord Chaitanya gave many teachings. He didn't write books, but he instructed in detail and empowered persons to write the books that he gave the teachings for. And principal amongst them were these same six, the six Goswamis. They're from very elevated families, again, skipping the detail, very elevated families, and Brahmana by character and by their life, and they wrote many books. And one of those prolific writers was named Jiva Goswami. Jiva Goswami wrote 400,000 verses in Sanskrit. That's a lot of verses. One person I know got his PhD at Oxford University taking 3 of those verses from one of his books. In other words, they're packed, not just little verses. So I'm making a reference now from one of those writings from Jiva Goswami. This is Bhakti Sandarbha. Sandarbha is a technical name, it's a certain type of literature. It has certain elements and certain structures. So here are 6 of them, and one of them is Bhakti Sandarbha. So this is a verse from Bhakti Sandarbha. Notice in the verse here, there's Shiva and Bhagavata. Shuddha Bhakta Sri Guru Sri Shiva Shacha Bhagavata Saha. Whenever the scriptures describe the spiritual master and the Lord Shiva as non-different from Krishna, because there are some places where both are expressed, pure devotees understand this is because of their being the most beloved of Sri Krishna. That is to say, Shiva sometimes, and Guru is sometimes identified as non-different from. And his teaching, his writing, of course, we just make the declaration, he gives evidence and explains and so forth. So there are places on the topic of Lord Shiva where what's the difference and what's the sameness? We're going to spend some time on that topic. But when it does express sameness, this is how it's to be understood. This is how we take it to be understood, with scriptural references to support the statement. One very important section, a very large section of Sri Brahma Samhita, so it's written by Lord Brahma upon his mature realization. There's some prayers to Govinda. There's a refrain, Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. So in those verses, the Govinda prayers, Govinda is the Lord of all, we're going to spend some time with verse 43 and verse 45, because verse 43 is kind of an introduction to the section. It describes, I'll say it slowly, we're going to chant it together in just a moment, but within the structure of the universe, there's Devi Dham, that's material creation, Mahesh Dham, the abode of Lord Shiva, Haridham, the abode of Lord Vishnu, and Golokadam, going vertically up. So, gradations of realms, that's text 43. And so Lord Shiva, that Mahesh Dham is one section. This is a quick gloss of the structure of the universe. You'll see some illustrations, very detailed, very beautiful, very carefully done illustrations of the structure of the universe, including those 4 gradations of realms. So here's the verse, and there's a recording of a nice devotee singing it, and assuming everything works properly. So that this last line is the refrain that's in each of those prayers, the Govinda prayers, we call them. Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. He's the original person. I worship him. So, starts with Goloka Namni, Nija Damni. Nija, his own Dham. Goloka Dham is his Dham, Govinda's Dham, known by the name Goloka. Then there's others, Devi Dham, Mahesh Dham, Hari Dham, Teshu. So, the translation, lowest of all is located Devi Dham, or the mundane world. That's at the bottom there. Next, above it is Mahesh Dham, or the abode of Mahesh. That's in the, there's supposed to be another arrow. It's not showing. There's Mahesh Dham is, can you see? Yes? Okay. It's there it is. Well, I mean, let's do this. Hang on. I can't use this laser pointer. There's an arrow right here. See that arrow right there? It's pointing to Lord Shiva. We'll hear some more about Lord Shiva, but this is in this region, this middle region. It's Mahesh Dham. And then above Mahesh Dham is Hari Dham, the abode of Hari, or Vishnu. And then Goloka is up top. And above them, all is located Krishna's own realm named Goloka. So the refrain, I adore the primeval Lord Govinda who has allotted their respective authorities to the rulers of those graded realms. So there's graded realms and there's rulers of those graded realms. And Mahesh Dham is the ruler of Mahesh. Mahesh is the ruler of Mahesh Dham. Devi is the ruler of Devi Dham. Hari is the ruler of Devi Dham, of Hari Dham. And Krishna is the presiding person in Goloka Dham. Here's a quick summary of that verse 43. Each of these graded realms is invested with appropriately graded powers and opulences, and those powers and opulences come from the source of everything. That's Govinda. That's Sarva Karana Karanam is the source of all the powers and all the opulences within those places. The Supreme Lord Govinda, by his own direct and indirect power, has constituted those respective potencies of those realms. So there's varieties of potencies, and there's a source of all those potencies in those different realms. Here's another illustration of the same thing. And what we're going to do is go to this region here, because this is Devi Dham down here, but this region here is Mahesh Dham. You can see it over here on the border, written vertically, Mahesh Dham. So let's take a close look at what the picture says. Here's Devi Dham with the structure of the universe here, the 14 planetary systems, half of the universe filled with the Garbhodak ocean, 7 coverings, 7 layers of covering, like coconut shell, covering the universe. And then on the other side of the universe is the causal ocean, or Karana ocean, or Viraja river. And look here. Here's Mahavishnu, who's reclining in the causal ocean, and you see these rays coming from him. He's glancing, and that glance is by the name Shambhu. There we see Shambhu riding on Nandi, and he's glancing upon the material energy, pradhan. So we're going to see a closer look of this one. Notice the lettering over here says Mahat-tattva. That's the cloud of the material energy. I told you it's 301. This is maybe new to all of you, but this is a picture of the structure of the universe and what's beyond the universe from the Vedic perspective. And here we'll see a closer look of this one. This is Mahakalapur, and that's where Mahakala resides. Mahakala is time, and Lord Shiva is the destroyer, as is Mahakala, also the destroyer. And here's Shiva-loka. And beyond Shiva-loka is Brahma-jyoti. So this is taken directly from the purport of the verse we just recited together, or heard. Next, above Devi Dham is located Shiva Dham, one portion of which, called Mahakala Dham, is enveloped in darkness. Here's Mahakala Dham. This is Mahakala Dham. So above Devi Dham, the next region is Mahesh Dham. Within that Mahesh Dham is Mahakala Dham, that's enveloped in darkness. Oops. Interpenetrating this portion of Shiva Dham, there shines the Sadashiva Loka, full of great light. So here's the Sadashiva Loka. This is the cloud of the material energy called Mahat-tattva. And there's within this whole area is Sadashiva Loka. The lower portion is Mahakala Dham. This is just a depiction of what the Vedas have to say about the structure of the universe and beyond the universe. Again, there's Karnadakshay Vishnu or Mahavishnu. He's glancing, pencil-like rays of light are being directed, carried by Shambhu. One of the meanings of Shambhu is the glance of Mahavishnu. And he's glancing upon the undifferentiated material energy. This is a depiction of how creation takes place, not Big Bang cosmology. It's Mahavishnu's glancing over the shadow energy, or Chaya Devi or Pradhan, glancing over that energy, and then it activates that energy. It's the primordial impregnation of the total Prakriti in the unmanifest state, so that it then becomes manifest. Shambhu is the glance, and in the section I just read is Mahakala Dham and Sadashiva Loka. You're probably all familiar with the nomenclature Sadashiva. It's a name of Lord Shiva. That's still within Mahesh Dham. It's not yet in Hari Dham. Okay. If this is information overload, stop me and we'll just do something else. But I've spent a lot of time preparing for this, so hopefully I'll go slow enough that although the nomenclature may be different, not familiar nomenclature, the puzzle pieces will start to fit together. Because we're going to be taking a look at Haridham, the Vaikuntha realm, shortly. But we're now looking at this Mahesh Dham because that's one of the graded realms. And the potencies invested in each of the realms come from the source of all potencies, the potent Ishvara Parama Krishna. Okay. Now, I'm going to slow down a little bit. I spent a great deal of time reviewing a book that Prabhupada wrote. The first book he wrote, the second book he wrote. The first book he wrote was Easy Journey to Other Planets. That was in 1961, when the space exploration was just getting underway. U.S. sent up its Apollo mission, the Russians sent up their Sputniks trying to get to the moon, and who's going to get there first, the space race, that period of time. It was, big, big. So Prabhupada wrote a book, Easy Journey to Other Planets, saying by yoga process, you don't need a rocket ship, you need spiritual qualification. And by spiritual qualification, there's ways to go to other planets without a rocket ship, without millions of dollars and all the material technology, but it requires spiritual capacity. So it has a book about that. Easy, first book. Just a little sharing, a little change of gears. At the time, Prabhupada had just accepted sannyas. He was living alone in a little room in Vrindavan, a room smaller than this, and certainly starker than this. I've seen a picture of the place. It's just barren wall. It's standard building in India. It's the wall. The paint was falling off the walls, and 10-foot tall ceilings and walls that are 3 feet thick, and those kind of very sterile. That was where he was writing this book. And he would travel back and forth between Vrindavan and Delhi because he was writing a fortnightly magazine, Back to Godhead magazine, with spiritual teachings in it with contemporary topics for people that were interested. And when he was in Delhi, someone who he had made acquaintance of gave him a little brochure of an event that was being planned in Tokyo. The promoter of the event sent us out in English, called the Conference for the Cultivation of the Human Spirit, which is what does that mean? Cultivation of the human spirit. It's just this is after World War I, after World War II, the space race is going on. There's lots of tension, but people are starting to think about better than being at war with each other, better we try to connect with each other. Cultivation of the human spirit was the theme. So forward-thinking, intellectual type people. Prabhupada wrote to the organizer, asked for an invitation. The organizer wrote back with a nice letter saying, when he needed to say so that Prabhupada could get a passport and visa. Because he didn't have a passport and visa. He's sannyasi in India that didn't have a passport and didn't need a visa. And people weren't allowing travel into other countries anyways at that time. It just started a little bit later. So the invitation, his plan was to write a book, a small book. The second book, title of his book was Light of the Bhagavat. And in the Light of the Bhagavat, his idea was that people from the Far East, they have a tendency to draw lessons of life from scenes of nature. That was his understanding, and it's true. And so he wrote a whole book based on Canto 10, Srimad Bhagavatam, Chapter 20, which is just about the rainy season and the autumn season, a little bit about what Krishna does in between. But mainly it was just scenes of nature. And from that, lessons of life. So in this book, it had 48 verses. In the verse number 47, here's something that Prabhupada wrote. Mahesh Dham is the marginal place between Haridham and Devi Dham, which we just heard, right? The impersonalists who want to merge into the existence of transcendence are placed within Mahesh Dham. Now, for me, that was puzzling because I had a very different conception. The different conception I had was that persons that wish to merge into the existence of transcendence would enter the Brahma Jyoti. Brahma Jyoti is the spiritual sky, the effulgence of the Supreme Lord in the form of light. Brahma Jyoti, the light of Brahman. That was my understanding. So reading this was surprising. That's why the big question marks. What's this? Here's I'm going to explain a little bit. So what's the difference between this Mahesh Dham and the Brahma Jyoti, or the spiritual light of the spiritual sky in the spiritual world? There's this in-between realm, the Mahesh Dham realm. So what's that? What's the place where those aspiring for liberation may go there? This is now drawing from Bhaktisiddhanta's commentary. We read this already. Above Devi Dham is located Shiva Dham, one portion of which, called Mahakala Dham, is enveloped in darkness. I read it. I showed you what it looks like in the artwork. Interpenetrating this portion of Shiva Dham, there shines Sadashiva Loka, full of great light. Paragraph. Above the same appears Haridham, or the transcendental Vaikuntha Loka. The potency of Devi Dham, that's now we're going back to the lower region. Just set it down. Just set it down. The potency of Devi Dham, the lower region, in the form of the extension of Maya. So Devi Dham is the form of the extension of Maya. That's the illusory potency of Krishna. And that of Shivaloka, that's above Devi Dham, is Mahesh Dham, or Shivaloka. Shivaloka is in the upper portion of Mahesh Dham. Shivaloka, consisting of time, space, and matter, are the potency of the separated particles. So Bhaktisiddhanta's language is very precise and very scientific. If you're not a scientist, you're going to be scratching your head when you read his writings. It's the potency of the separated particles, that's jivas, pervaded by the penumbral reflection of the subjective portion. What's that mean? Penumbral. So some of you are scientists, so you know what umbra and penumbra means. In case you forgot, here's what it is. This is the umbra, so there's a source of light, here's the opaque object, and some at the right, like a little cone-shaped thing. The darkest region is here, but some light is diffused light, and that's the penumbra. And then there's the penumbral refraction. So up on the left, shadows, umbra, penumbra, shadows. So what Bhaktisiddhanta's little technical language, his command of the English language is better than mine, better than most people's. He's saying the separated particles, that's the jiva souls, the separated particles pervaded by the penumbral reflection of the subjective portion. What's the subjective portion? It's the forms of Vishnu, or Narayana, or Lord Hari in Haridham. So Lord Shiva is the penumbral reflection of Hari. There's the light, there's the part that's the umbra, and then there's not exactly light and not exactly darkness either. This is my understanding of what he's saying. Lord Shiva is neither Jiva, nor is Lord Shiva Vishnu, but he's the penumbral reflection of, in between the two. So I'll say the same thing in a different way. In the science of spirituality, there's different tattvas or realities or existences. One of them is Vishnu-tattva. Another is Jiva-tattva. And there's many, many expansions of Vishnu in the category of Vishnu-tattva. There's many, many expansions of Jivas in the category of Jiva-tattva. And then there's, in between, Shiva-tattva. And he's in this penumbral reflection using his language. Neither this nor that, but he's in his own category. Shiva-tattva is in its own category, is essentially what he's saying. And he, Lord Shiva, has potencies that living entities don't have. And he doesn't have all the potencies Lord Hari has. Keeping it simple. But his language is very specific. So here's the same illustration. And if you notice down here, there's the Sadashiva Loka. Remember that one? And this is the upper portion of Mahesh Dham. Over here is Mahesh Dham. And above Mahesh Dham is Hari Dham. And Hari Dham is all these Vaikuntha planets. And notice, look carefully up here, you'll see there's Ayodhya. Ayodhya is at the very top of Haridham. There it is, Ayodhya. So Ayodhya, I'll say it again, Ayodhya is within Haridham, but it's the closest Vaikuntha planet to Goloka. Why? Because it's more personal. For example, does Narayan have a mother and father? Does Ram have a mother and father? Does Narayan have brothers? Does Ram have brothers? Etc., 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 etc. So the personalism features of Ram's activity in his spiritual abode, not only when he appears here, it's far more variegated in the personal sense. So it's the closest, it's the topmost part of Haridham, the closest part to Golokadham. And now we're going to just look at Golokadham. There's Golokadham, with Radha and Krishna in the center. And the petals are indicating the abodes of the associates of Radha. Like up here is, at the top is Lalita and Vishaka and Suchitra and other Tungavidya, other Champakalata, other of the gopis, associates, and the abodes of others, all in this picture. That's Golokadham. And there's other things. And in different parts of Golokadham, Krishna would perform different pastimes. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to be discussing a pastime in Vrindavan when, on the occasion of Shivaratri, Nanda Maharaj and the residents of Vrindavan decided they wanted to go on a little tour to visit a very nice place where there was a Shiva temple. We'll narrate that tomorrow morning. But, it's one of those petals in Goloka. So Krishna and Nanda and the Vrijvasis go to honor Lord Shiva in Goloka. We'll hear about it tomorrow. So this part, this session is a little on the technical side because it's not describing so much the Leelas. First, it's just establishing tattva. Now, who is Lord Shiva in relation to, for example, in relation to Govinda? Or what is the abode of Lord Shiva in relation to Devi Dham, Haridham, and Golokadham? It's just making definitions of things. And tomorrow will come the Leela parts. It's going to be, I'm going to have a good time anyway. Jiva Goswami, I mentioned his name. Jiva Goswami is one of the 6 direct associates of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu who wrote 400,000 verses and in very, very elevated writing. So he made a commentary on Brahma Samhita. Why did he make a commentary on Brahma Samhita? One of the activities, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had accepted sannyas when he was quite young, younger than probably, well, most of us in this room. He was 24 when he accepted sannyas. That's pretty young to take sannyas. And when he, after taking sannyas, his mother requested him, you're my only son. Can you please, don't go to Vrindavan, I may never hear of you. Please go to Puri, because Krishna is in Puri also. And because devotees from Bengal, every year they go to Rath Yatra in Puri. So when they come back, I get some news of you and like that. So he went to Puri. And after staying in Jagannath Puri for some time, some months, nearly half a year, he, on the pretext of searching for his elder brother who had taken sannyas, he made a 2-year tour of South India. One of those places when he went to South India was the Adikeshava temple. Any of you from South India? Yeah? You know where Adikeshava temple is? It's on the western side, almost to the very end of India. It's a celebrated temple. It's very old. So when he was visiting there, he heard the Brahmanas reciting Brahma Samhita. He was very excited. It's wonderful literature. They made a copy for him, and then he traveled with copies of that Brahma Samhita and distributed amongst his followers. So Jiva Goswami made a commentary in Sanskrit. This is from Jiva Goswami's commentary. Here's the Sanskrit that he wrote, and the translation of the Sanskrit from text 43. Text 43 is describing Hari Mahesh Dham. So the Shambhu-tattva, or the principle of Lord Shiva, is like a lamp covered with carbon because of his being in charge of the mode of ignorance. He's a guna avatar. Guna, there are 3 modes of nature. Vishnu is in charge of the mode of goodness. Brahma is in charge of creation or passion. Lord Shiva is in charge of destruction or tamagun. So because of being in charge of the mode of ignorance, his luminosity or his illumination is not full. It's like a lamp covered with carbon because of his being in charge of the mode of ignorance. The illumination from such a lamp is very minute. It's another way of saying the penumbral. It's not full light, it's not full darkness. Not umbra, but it's not the full light either. So it's in between. The illumination from such a lamp is very minute, therefore the power of Lord Shiva cannot compare to that of the Vishnu principle. Vishnu principle means Vishnu-tattva. It's clear? Should I say it again? I'll say it again simply. Commenting on this Mahesh Dham, it's in this in-between position, marginal position, neither here, Vishnu-tattva, nor there, Jiva-tattva. He's in his own category, Shiva-tattva. And that Shiva-tattva, he doesn't have the fullness of Vishnu. It's like light that has a lamp that has carbon. So it doesn't give the fullness of Vishnu, but he's much above the living entities, the jivas. He's in this marginal position. And now I'll say a couple things. We'll go on. My experience of doing this exercise for some number of hours, 30 hours or whatever it was, it starts to get more complex. And it is said that there are 2 tattvas in scripture that are very difficult. One of them is Guru-tattva, to understand exactly what it is, and the other is Shiva-tattva, to understand exactly what Shiva-tattva is. It's really complicated. And you'll see why as we get going. For example, I'll share with you now, and we'll go through it in detail. There are 7 different places or abodes where Lord Shiva resides. And when you hear one, you think, oh, that's it. And then you hear another, well, wait a minute, and then you hear 5 others. Your head spins. But it's quite okay because his mood is a loving servant and he's deriving powers appropriate for the location or the abode where he is residing to match those powers. The powers are invested in him to do those services that he does in those different places. Okay, the complexities about to begin. There's 2 Sadashivas. Sadashiva, one is in Vaikuntha, so that's this Haridam region. Say it again. There's an abode where Lord Shiva resides in Vaikuntha planet known by the name Sadashiva. It's literally not different than Narayana, just known by the name Sadashiva. And then there's another Sadashiva that's in Sadashiva Loka. We already touched on what Sadashiva Loka is, remember? At the uppermost portion of Maheshdam, there's Mahakaladam that's enveloped in darkness. And then there's this region of light called Sadashiva Loka. And they're at the topmost region of Maheshdam. So fasten your seatbelt. We're going to just dive into a little bit. First, we'll start with the Vaikuntha one. This is taken directly from Chaitanya Charitamrita. There's the verse and purport. Rudra, who is an expansion of Sadashiva and who appears in unlimited universes, is also a guna avatar. What's guna avatar mean? Guna means modes of nature, so that's of this world. Guna is of this world. There's no gunas or modes of material nature in the spiritual world. But this expansion, Rudra, is in the material world, and he's in charge of one of the modes. Which of the 3 modes? Tamas, or darkness, or destruction. So he's also Guna avatar and is the ornament of all the demigods in the endless universes. The ornament of all the demigods means of all those controllers within the universe, he's the best. He's the most powerful, etc. Here's the purport. This is Srila Prabhupada's writing. In the Vayu Purana, there's a description of Sadashiva in one of the Vaikuntha planets. You're going to see this twice because it's important. So in Vaikuntha planets, one of the forms of the Lord in the Vaikuntha planets is Sadashiva. That Sadashiva is a direct expansion of Lord Krishna's form for pastimes. In different colored letters, it is said that Sadashiva, or sometimes Lord Shambhu, is an expansion from the Sadashiva in the Vaikuntha planets, Lord Vishnu. Lord Shambhu, who did we say Lord Shambhu is? If you remember from that diagram, Lord Shambhu is another name for the glance of Mahavishnu. The glance of Mahavishnu is what brings about creation. He just glances. He didn't have to do anything. He just glances with his eyes. And that glance is Shambhu. And Shambhu, the glance, contacts the undifferentiated totality of material elements, and then the elements start to differentiate, and creation starts to begin. So the glance is Lord Shambhu, and Lord Shambhu is said, this Sadashiva of this realm is an expansion of the Sadashiva in the Vaikuntha realm. And that his consort, that's Lord Shambhu, Mahamaya, is an expansion of Rama Devi, or Lakshmi. So the consort of Mahavishnu, in Vaikuntha realm, Lakshmi is the consort of Narayan, Lakshmi Narayan. And if you just think about it for a moment, whenever you see illustrations or paintings of Mahavishnu, do you ever see the goddess of fortune? No? Why don't you see it? Because it's described, she is known by the name Rama Devi, and Rama Devi is enjoying eternal pastimes with Mahavishnu within. So she's there, that is the Shakti of Mahavishnu, and the expansion of Rama Devi is the consort of Shambhu, known by the name Mahamaya or Durga. So Durga is this realm where we are, Devidam, or Durga's realm. Mahamaya is the origin or birthplace of material nature. That's one paragraph. One more paragraph. In the Puranas, it is found that Shiva appears sometimes from the heads of Brahma. Brahma has 4 heads. He gets angry because his sons, the Kumaras, they don't want to assist him in populating the universe. So from his anger, from his brow comes Rudra. Sometimes it's described like that. Some other times it's described, he sometimes comes from the head of Vishnu. It's described directly in Brahma Samhita like that. The annihilator, Rudra, that has come from the anger of Lord Brahma, is born from Sankarshan, or that's an aspect of Mahavishnu, and the ultimate fire to burn the whole creation. So we'll come back to this rather than explaining it, then explaining it again. We'll come back to this. If he comes from Mahavishnu, how is he then an expansion of Sankarshan? I'll come back to it. The next verse, Sri Sadashiva also desires only to be a servant of Lord Krishna. He always says, I'm a servant of Lord Krishna. So that's the Vaikuntha, back at the heading. There are 2 Sadashivas. Here's a reference from Chaitanya Charitamrita. And now I'm going to go to another scripture that's written by Rupa Goswami. I mentioned there were 6 Goswamis, and we spoke twice already about Jiva. His uncle, and the greatest among them in terms of writing, was Rupa Goswami. And Rupa Goswami wrote this book, Laghu Bhagavatamrita. Essentially, the book is a description of the avatar forms of the Lord that appear in this world. That's the topic. So here he is writing, Rupa Goswami is writing, makes a reference again to Vayu Purana, where it speaks of the Vaikuntha feature Sadashiva. The form called Sadashiva is devoid of any trace of tamas. The Guna avatar has a trace. Sadashiva has not even a trace. He, Sadashiva, is directly Narayana, or the Vilas, or Svangsa. Vilas means there's slight differences of bodily feature, or he's the Sva Angsa, a plenary portion of Krishna. The original form of Krishna, the original form of everything is Krishna. He's a nice boy. And is the cause of all causes. So this Sadashiva in Vaikuntha realm is understood like Krishna. We said about the first verse of Brahma Samhita, Ishvara Parama Krishna, Satchitananda Vigraha, Sarva Karana Karanam, he's the cause of all causes. So here it is again. This form of Sadashiva, like Krishna, is the cause of all causes. That form is described as dwelling on Shiva Loka in Vaikuntha, within the Vayu Purana and other scriptures. So this book that Rupa Goswami wrote, some generations later, there was a commentator, very elevated Vaishnava named Baladev Vidyabhusan, and he wrote, Krishna is the Swayam Rupa, that's his original form, and Narayana and other forms are Vilas, or Sva Angsa. Amsa, it's a technical term. Angsa means in full. Now, Narayana is a manifestation of the original in full. Svangsa. The form called Sadashiva, who is without a trace of tamagun, who is the cause of all causes, is the Narayana or pastime form of Krishna. In the Taittiriya Upanishad, the names Narayana, Achyuta, and Shiva are used to indicate only one person. When the Kaivalya Upanishad mentions Uma, that word refers to Kirti, which is another name of Lakshmi, or the consort of Narayana, Kirti. Trilochana, that's spoken in the Laghu Bhagavatamrita verse. Trilochana means one who sees all three divisions of time. Again, quoting Vayu Purana, Jiva Goswami in his Bhagavat Sandarbha identifies this form and planet in the same way. So you see they're collaborating. Down here is Jiva Goswami is being referenced by a later generation Acharya. The reference from Vayu Purana, which says there's a Sadashiva in Vaikuntha, is confirmed in another one of his writings, Bhagavat Sandarbha. Okay. It's not too much confusing yet. All we just did was say there's two Sadashivas. There's one in Vaikuntha, and there's one that's not in Vaikuntha. And that other Sadashiva that's not in Vaikuntha, that's in this Sadashiva Loka. That's in the upper region of Maheshdam, but it's not in Vaikuntha-dham or Haridham. That's all. So that one term applies to two different features of the same person. One is full and the other is not full. So far we now have two Sadashivas, so there's at least two different locations. One is in the Vaikuntha realm and one is not. So how many are there? And what are they? So what I plan to do is, with your permission, I'll go through these 7 and then I'll repeat them quickly, and then we'll to have a little discussion, have Kirtan, get some air movement going on, and then we'll go back to part 2. Because there's another verse from Brahma Samhita. Now, if this is information overload, I'm sorry. I'll try to simplify it enough that it's digestible, and maybe they'll have some questions. Besides, I couldn't understand any of that. Sadashiva Loka in Vaikuntha. We already touched on this. So this is a repeat. It's nothing new. Here's that same verse from Chaitanya Charitamrita. And I didn't cover the whole verse. It's just in the Vayu Purana, there's a description that Sadashiva, there's Sadashiva in the Vaikuntha planets, who is a direct expansion of Krishna's form for pastimes, Vilas. expansion. It is said that Sadashiva, or Lord Shambhu, is an expansion from the Sadashiva and the Vaikuntha planets. So the lower one is from the upper one. That's what it's saying. Here is a similar but slightly different reference from Brihat Bhagavatamrita. So you heard just a moment ago about Laghu Bhagavatamrita. That was written by Rupa Goswami. His elder brother was one of the 6 Goswamis, and he wrote Brihat. Brihat means big. Laghu means light. Because his younger brother was looking up to his elder brother. You write Brihat, I'll write Laghu. So Brihat Bhagavatamrita, right, he says, Shiva came from his own planet. So what's his own planet? That's this Vaikuntha planet. Shiva-loka, or Sadashiva-loka in the Vaikuntha realm. Shiva came from his own planet, as transcendental as he, an abode reached through devotion by those who see him and Lord Krishna as non-different. So this is the non-difference feature, and there's a difference feature. Here's Sanatana Goswami's purport. Lord Shiva's own planet, beyond the coverings of the material universe, is attainable by those who worship him and Lord Vishnu on the same level. That transcendental world is suitable for Lord Shiva's pleasure, equipped as it is with all kinds of eternal and unlimited opulence. So this is Sadashiva in Vaikuntha Loka, that's the heading. There's one more reference. It's a nice one. Again, Brihat Bhagavatamrita. This is Sanatana Goswami, referring again to this Vayu Purana. The abode of Sri Mahadev lies outside the seven coverings of the universe. Devi Dham is at the bottom, and there's 14 planetary systems and the Garbhodak ocean at the bottom half. And then there's shells, 7 layers. They're described like footballs floating. They're floating in the causal ocean. So on the other side of those shells, those 7 coverings, is where Mahesh Dham is situated. Now, from the purport, this abode, this is Sanatana Goswami writing, this abode of Lord Shiva's is not a creation of Maya, not in Devi Dham. In Shiva-loka, there is no unhappiness. That world is attained by the best of Lord Shiva's devotees, namely, the ones who understand him to be non-different from Sri Krishna, not the Shaivites who are karmis or gyanis, or who worship Lord Shiva as an independent supreme controller. This Shiva-loka is his original abode. Clear? And the next 2 verses say, or it's written, on Shiva-loka, Lord Shiva always worships the personality of Godhead in his form of as Sri Sankarshana, who has thousands of serpent hoods. Sankarshana is a very important personality. We're going to hear as we go forward. Lord Shiva is an expansion from Sankarshana. Knowing that he, Lord Shiva, knows that he is an expansion from Sankarshana, when he's sitting in meditation, what's he meditating on? Or who is he meditating on? He's meditating on his source, Sankarshana. Both Lord Sankarshana and his expansion, Lord Shiva, are incarnations of the Supreme Godhead, so they are non-different. And those who understand like that, they're entitled to this Vaikuntha abode. When the time comes for the material universe to be annihilated, Rudra the destroyer appears from Sri Sankarshana. Rudra is the destructive principle. When it's time for cosmic annihilation, he does his thing. And he appears directly from Sri Sankarsana. Okay, so that's one of 7 abodes. We're starting at the very, very top, in the Vaikuntha realm, Sadashiva. Just below, at the uppermost portion of Maheshnam, is another Sadashiva, who is the expansion from what's called Mula Sankarshan. So now we're going to go to the Shiva-loka, this place that's beyond the coverings of the universe. We heard about it already. Again, Bhaktisiddhanta's very gifted use of the English language, he calls it the prototype Shambhu. You know what prototype is, right? If you're going to patent something, you take a prototype to the patent office, and if there isn't something like it, they'll give you a patent. And then you're entitled to make something that's like the one you just gave to them. The one you gave to them is the prototype, from which you make copies. That's what prototype means. That's just one understanding that I can easily get what prototype means. So from the prototype Shambhu is this form of Lord Shiva that's in Shiva-loka, that's not in the Vaikuntha realm, but it's beyond the coverings of the universe. This is the Maheshnam. We saw the picture, and now we're going to hear some more. Or the Shambhu of the primary creation, Sarga. What does that mean? Stepping back, Srimad Bhagavatam says that within the Srimad Bhagavatam there's 10 topics. And 2 of those 10 topics are the creation that Vishnu does, called Sarga, and the creation that Brahma does, called Visarga, or subcreation. So before there's the subcreation, before there's the secondary creation, before there's what Brahma does, there's entities that make the subcreation possible. And one of those entities that makes the subcreation possible is the prototype Shambhu, from which the Shambhus of this world come. So that abode, because this topic is, what are the abodes of Lord Shiva? So one of them is this one. Above Devi Dham, in fact, there isn't even a Devi Dham yet, and prototype Shambhu is existing. And who is this prototype Shambhu? Is an expansion of the original, the Mula Sankarshan, from the spiritual world, prior to cosmic creation. So here's Brahma Samhita, text number 8. In these earlier sections, it's slow motion details of how the creation unfolds. So this is one of those verses. This is just directly the verse, and it's Bhaktisiddhanta's language. He calls it halo. At creation, this is the primary creation, before the subcreation, before what Brahma does. At creation, there appears a divine halo of the nature of his own subjective portion. Again, the subjective portion means a direct expansion of the original Krishna or Govinda. There's an expansion. That's this subjective portion. This halo is divine Shambhu, the masculine symbol or manifested emblem of the Supreme Lord. Remember, we saw in that twice, we saw Shambhu riding on Nandi. Shambhu is one of the names for the glance of Mahavishnu, glancing upon Pradhan, the totality of the material elements in their undifferentiated state. So that's the masculine symbol, that is the impregnation of Prakriti. The masculine symbol is Shambhu. He's carrying the glance of Mahavishnu. He is the glance of Mahavishnu, and the glance of Mahavishnu impregnates Pradhan. the primordial impregnation event, the beginning of creation, requires a masculine and feminine feature. So the masculine feature is the glance of Mahavishnu or Shambhu. This halo is the dim twilight reflection. Remember this penumbral, the same thing. Twilight is it's neither day nor night. It's in between day and night. Twilight. So the twilight reflection of the Supreme Eternal Effulgence. It's this marginal position. Shambhu is this marginal position personality. The dim twilight reflection, or the divine halo. So the halo is not just like the direct light, it's the glow around the direct light. Yes? Confirmed. So that was text 8 from Brahma Samhita. Now we're moving along to text 15. Same language, the divine masculine manifested halo Shambhu is the plenary manifestation of his prototype Shambhu. So now we have not only two Sadashivas, we have two Shambhus. The original Shambhu is the glance, and then after the glance contacts Pradhan, and guess what? You get a manifestation of that glance in the form of another Shambhu or his expansion. And that's the Guna Avatar Shambhu, or Lord Shiva. Because creation is now getting underway, because the masculine contact with the feminine material nature has happened, and now things start to happen. Things start to manifest out of that pradhan. And one of them is an expansion of the original Shambhu. That's Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva appears as the presiding person of Tamagun, because before that there weren't gunas. They were inactive, whose nature has been already described. Okay, so there's 7 abodes. We've discussed 2 so far. In the Vaikuntha realm, in the upper region of Maheshdam, this Sadashiva Loka, and now we're going to get into the manifestation, and that's Kailash. Kailas is where the Guna Avatar, Lord Shiva or Shambhu, reside. And popularly, that's the personality, the feature of Lord Shiva that people worship. That not everyone does, but that's common. Here's a reference from Srimad Bhagavatam, where it says, where is Kailash? Kailash, the residence of Lord Shiva, is situated near the residential quarters of Kuvera. So Kuvera is one of the demigods. He has a nice service. He's the treasurer. And somehow treasurers get to be rich. We don't know how that happens. But Kuvera is very wealthy. His abode is very wealthy. And he's a great devotee of Lord Shiva. And he worshipped Lord Shiva and worshipped Lord Shiva, Lord Shiva. And he then, Lord Shiva wanted to offer him a benediction. He said, please just stay on the precincts of my abode, my residence, my facilities. So the Mount Kailash is in the region of Kuvera's abode. Like, for example, some of you know the story. Narada Muni went to visit one time. He went to visit Kuvera. And when he was going to visit Kuvera, he saw the sons of Kuvera. And they were intoxicated, naked, with girls in the sacred river. And he was shocked. And they were intoxicated. They didn't even bother to cover themselves. So he contemplated what's the right thing to do to help these young men. So he then decided, you want to stand naked? Very well. You can stand naked as trees. And so they became trees in the courtyard of Nanda Maharaj. And then remember? And then later, Krishna pulled over. He said, you'll be delivered by Krishna later after you've learned your lesson. So Krishna knocked over after the binding of Lord Krishna by Mother Jasoda. You with me? Some of you are with me. Mother Jasoda, the Damodar month is a celebrated time where we honor Mother Jasoda binding Krishna with rope because he was naughty. He was stealing butter, he broke the butter pot and so on. So she tried binding him and tried binding. So she eventually bound him and she went back to do her duties. Krishna then looked at the twin Arjuna trees and said, my devotee Narada Muni gave this benediction that I would deliver them, so I should deliver them. So he started toddling, pulling behind the grinding mortar and knocked over these two trees. And from the two trees came the two sons of Kuvera. You know the story? It's in the Bhagavatam, 10th canto, Krishna's childhood pastimes. Sons of Kuvera. So Kuvera was a worshipper of Lord Shiva. And Kuvera was granted the benediction, whatever he would like, just please reside close by my kingdom. So he resided in Mount Kailash, which is close to his kingdom. Another reference, Kuvera once earned the gratitude of Lord Shiva by devotedly worshipping him. From then on, within this universe, Lord Shiva has submitted to Kuvera's authority on Kuvera's Mount Kailash. So that's another one of the abodes. So now we have 3 out of 7. In the Vaikuntha realm, in the uppermost portion of Maheshdam, and then there's a place in the heavenly realm, which is part of Devi Dham, the upper planetary systems where the Devas reside, Svargaloka, it's within the universe. So Lord Shiva takes his place at Mount Kailash by the realm of Kuvera. Now we're going to go a little bit further down. There's 7 upper planetary systems. We'll see some images of some paintings shortly. And 7 lower planetary systems. 7 and 7 makes 14. The structure of the universe, Vedic cosmology says there's 14 planetary systems. We're in Bhu Mandala, the lower region of the upper 7. Bhu, Bhuvar, and Svargaloka. Maharloka, Janaloka, Tapaloka, Brahmaloka. That's 7. So now we're going to go down in the region below this earthly realm. The second below the earthly realm is Vittala. I'm going to show you a painting shortly. Vittala is one of the abodes of Lord Shiva, where it's described in Srimad Bhagavatam, 5th canto. 5th canto is a description of Vedic cosmology. So it describes the abode of Lord Shiva being Vittala, where Lord Shiva and his wife Gauri reside. Because of their presence, a kind of gold is produced called Hataka. There's details described in that verse. Here's the painting that shows the very bottom of the universe. It's one of many. There's the Garbhodak ocean. Garbhodak Shri Vishnu is reclining on the Garbhodak ocean. And from his body, from his navel, comes a lotus flower. And Lord Brahma is at the top of that lotus flower, lotus stem, excuse me. And here's the 7 upper. Here's the 7 lower. And down here is Vittala. So Atala, Vittala, Sutala, Tatala, etc. So this is where the abode, one of the abodes of Lord Shiva. He's a very busy person. We're not done yet. That's only 4, there's 3 more to go. And I'm going to stop when we finish the 7s, and we'll do a little review and see if you want to discuss. Mahakalapur. Maha means great. Kala means time. As we know from Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, time I am, the destroyer of all things. Kala. Kalos me. A time I am. So Kala, Mahakala, is a place where Lord Shiva resides. One of his abodes. And there's different places where there's Mahakala. I'm going to go through them with you. But first I'll list them. The first one is at the bottom of the universe. When it's time for destruction, cosmic annihilation, flames, there's different descriptions, but flames come from the mouth of Anantashesh. And then the 11 Rudras, they do their dance, the Rudra dance, and the flames engulf the whole universe in fire. That's the cosmic annihilation program. So Mahakala, Pura means place, at the bottom of the universe. We'll see some more. The second is this Mahakalapur is described several places as the abode of liberation. We touched on it before, and I'm circling back, we're going to touch on it again. It's above or beyond the shells of the universe. There's Devi Dham at the bottom, covered by 7 layers or shells. And then on the beyond that is where Mahakala is. Maybe you remember hearing it. But here's some further references. This is from, again, Brihat Bhagavatamrita. It's the same place, but it's described this way. By crossing beyond the shells of the universe, one reaches the abode of Lord Mahakala, the imperishable abode of liberation, where material existence disappears. It is called Mahakalapur because there all material causes and effects are non-existent. Here we have causes and effects. Gross and subtle causes, called karya, like causes, gross and subtle causes, the 5 basic elements, and gross and subtle effects or products, karya. There's a verse in Bhagavad Gita, karya karna kartradve hetu prakriti ruchate. Krishna says, never consider yourself to be the cause of causes or effects. All it's being carried out by prakriti. So in this Mahakala Pur, there's no material causes, no material effects. It's like a neutral zone. Neutral, but not fully devotional yet. We'll hear that shortly. And then here's a third place, it's Mahakalapur, the abode of Mahavishnu, where Krishna and Arjuna went to deliver the sons of a Dwaraka Brahmana. So we're going to go through these one by one. So notice the ones at the top. At the bottom of the universe, where the 11 Rudras reside. There's another nice picture of the universe. Here, we see the 4 upper planetary systems above Bhu, Bhuvar, and Svargalokas. And at the very top, above Svargaloka, there's the Saptarishis, the abodes of the 7 rishis, the Big Dipper. We can see that in the sky. And above that is Dhruvaloka. And you see these ropes coming down, those are called ropes of air, and that moves the planetary systems in a clockwise direction around the zodiac, making different seasons and different astrological and astronomical events. So that's upper here, Maharloka, the upper 4, and below that, Bhu, Bhuvar, and Svargalokas. Then this is just a quick way of illustrating the 7 lower planetary systems. Their names are over here. And then they're supported by Anantashesh. There you see his name, Anantashesh. Interesting, I find it interesting. Below these 7 are hell, and just slightly above Naraka Loka is Pitraloka. You know, the place where forefathers may go. And people that perform Shraddha is to offer Shraddha to their forefathers who may be down here. So the abode of Mahakalapur is somewhere in this region where Anantashesh is. At the bottom of the universe, that's where the Rudras go. They're different. The name Rudra can apply to many different things. Commonly, the Rudras refer to the 11 manifestations of Lord Shiva. And they're very important persons to be involved in the destruction of the universe. They dance so the flames engulf the whole universe. They have a wild dancing program. Here's another painting illustrating them. So that's one of the Mahakalapurs at the bottom of the universe. We saw this illustration before. Now you're seeing it again. This is the abode of liberation place. There it is, Mahakala Dham. So here's the Devi Dham region here, with its 7 coverings. There we see Shambhu, the glance of Mahavishnu. And above the glance of Mahavishnu, Shambhu, there's Mahakala Dham, or the abode of liberation. We heard the destination of, we'll hear it again. Oh, we'll cover it now. And the other half is where the region of light. So rather than covered by darkness, Mahakala Dham is Sadashiva Loka. You see the name here. This is Karna Dakshai Vishnu or Mahavishnu. So the abode of liberation beyond the universe's shells. And there's another. Some of you know the story. This is a little bit of a story along with Tattva. Krishna was in Dwarka, and Arjuna was visiting Krishna in Dwarka. And there was one Brahmin who one son after the next son after the next son, as soon as they were born, but they just disappeared. They didn't die. They just, poof, they disappeared. It happened again and again and again. So he went and complained to Krishna, what kind of ruler are you? My son is born and he just disappears? What kind of protection is this? You're an unworthy person to be a ruler. So Arjuna happened to hear that when he was visiting. So he said, I'll protect you, I promise. I have archery skills and so many things. So just when your wife is ready to deliver, you call me and I'll. So he called. Arjuna came with arrows. He created a structure that was impenetrable. The child was born and the child disappeared. So Arjuna was so distressed, he decided, I'm going to give up my life. I gave my promise to a Brahmin, I can't keep it. So he was going to give up his life. And Krishna said, don't do that. I know where the child is. I'll take you. I got a special chariot, we'll go. And zoom, zoom, off they went. And it describes in the 10th canto, chapter 89, the journey that they went. They went through all the planetary systems, through the coverings of the universe, onto the other side of the coverings of the universe. It was so bright they had to get their sunglasses out. No, they had to squint to keep from becoming blinded in that region of light. And in that region of light, they came to the causal ocean, where it's a region of light. That's here. This is a commentary by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur on this verse where they're making this journey, entering into the causal ocean. So again, where's the causal ocean? It's on the other side of the coverings of the universe, but it's not yet in the Vaikuntha realm. It's the Maheshdam region, where there's the causal ocean. Here we go. Krishna and Arjuna entered the causal ocean, ornamented with huge waves agitated by a strong wind, and saw a wondrous abode called Mahakala. Sridhar Swami, he's a very ancient commentator on the Bhagavatam, describes this city by quoting from the Mrityunjaya Tantra that gives the Sanskrit, gives the translation, and I'm just going to read his commentary on that translation. First, it's going up. They pass through Brahma's abode at the top of the universe, topmost planet within the universe, Satyaloka. And then they pass through the shells of the universe. And in passing through the shells of the universe, they came to abodes of the expansions of Vishnu, which is not the Vaikuntha planets, but expansions, material expansions of the Vaikuntha planets, where the demigod sons of Mother Vikunta reside. What's that? Some of you may know that the Nanda and Yashoda, mother and father of Krishna, were within them came demigods, and male and female. And I can't remember their names right now. Someone remember their names right now? Dara and Drona. Very good. Dara and Drona. Drona is the male. So it's in that region where there's personalities from the spiritual world that have their demigod expansions in this region. That's what it's speaking about. So they, Drona and Dara, underwent austerities, requesting a benediction that they could have Krishna as their son, that this sanction was given, they could take birth, and on earth they entered into the bodies of Nanda and Yasoda to become mother and father. So it's from that region that they passed through. That's what's being described. Just in case you want to take a journey through the structure of the universe. There's different regions within our universe that's revealed in a number of ways, but this is one of them. The journey of Arjuna and Krishna to rescue the son of the Brahmana, the sons, plural, of the Brahmana. After they went through that region, the abode, very interesting, here's another, actually it's abode number 8. The abode of the expansions of Rudra is called Rudra Loka, located within the covering shell of false ego, ahankar. So one of the seven shells covering the universe is the layer of ahankar. And within that layer of ahankar, expansions of Rudra are situated. Rudra is really busy and diverse like anything. Then, the abode of Mahavishnu is the Mahavishnu Loka located within the covering shell of the Mahatattva. That's the 7th covering. And then beyond that covering, the abode of Mahadevi is Mahadevi Loka located within the covering shell of unmanifested Prakriti. The ocean of nectar of Brahman is the causal ocean. So they did this big journey. Just in the course of their journey, is describing going to the abode of Mahavishnu, because that's where the sons of the Brahmana were. Later it's revealed, later in that chapter 89, Mahavishnu said, I took them because I know you would come. I'm so occupied up here in Mahavishnu Loka, I wouldn't get to see you otherwise. So thank you for coming. Here's the sons of the Brahmana. You can take them back now. So in the same commentary of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he writes Mahakala, or Mahavaikuntha-nath, is the Lord of Mahakala, Mahavaikuntha, or Mahakalapuram, situated in the spiritual sky within the water of the causal ocean. So let's go back. Right now, we're in the spiritual sky. Isn't that good news? We're in the spiritual sky because the whole cloud of the material energy is just a cloud of the material energy in the vastness of the spiritual sky. Just like when you're riding in an airplane and you're going down the runway and seatbelt fastened, and the altitude is going up and up, and eventually you get to where the clouds are, assuming there's clouds. And then when you're passing through the clouds, you don't see anything. You just see clouds. Look out the window. Just clouds flashing by the window. And then you're above the clouds, you're up above the clouds, and you can see the sunlight or whatever you see up there above the clouds. So let's go back down again. When you're in the clouds, are you in the sky or you're in the clouds? Well, you're in the sky because the clouds are in the sky. Yes? You're in the sky. So when you're in the Mahatattva, you're in the spiritual sky, where the causal ocean is in this portion. Remember from the illustrations, I'll show you them one more time. But in this Maheshtam region, that's where Mahavishnu is. And he's reclining on the causal ocean, which is part of Maheshtam. So what it says here, is situated in the spiritual sky within the water of the causal ocean was Mahavishnu. And his city was Mahakala. And it was very bright and very beautiful. And there's verses and verses and verses describing the abode of Mahavishnu. So normally with the painting, it's just showing he's reclining on an Anantashesh, and his Anantashesh is on the causal ocean. But there's a pura, there's a whole place. You're not alone with just Lakshmi and Anantashesh. According to Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 89 of Canto 10, there's a whole place, Mahakalapur. That's one of the abodes where Lord Shiva resides. This abode was the most dazzling among the effulgent things that they saw. So Mahakalapur, one of the places, is in this abode of Mahavishnu. There's more to say, but I'm going to go on. I skipped number 6. We'll circle back to number 6 at the end when we do the review. It says, there's a place that says Lord Shiva resides in the different elements. We'll come back to that. That's number 6. Number 7, Ilavrita Varsha. What's Ilavrita Varsha mean? Ilavrita Varsha is one of the 9 Varshas in the central island called Jambudweep. I told you it's 301 class. This Bhumandala is the earthly realm. The earthly realm has 7 islands and 7 oceans. The central island is known as Jambudweep. The Jambudweep has a big mountain right in the middle of it called Sumeru, golden mountain, like an upside down cone. It's bigger on the top and flat, and goes down, 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 narrow, narrow, narrow. That's Sumeru, golden mountain. And surrounding Golden Mountain, on that central island called Jambudweep, there's different Varshas, 9 of them. One of those 9 is Bharata Varsha. Sounds like India, right? Bharata Varsha. That's one of the 9. And then another one that's right where Sumeru hits in this mandala is Alavrita Varsha. So that's one of the abodes of Lord Shiva, one of the abodes, one of the 7. Now I guess we have to say 8, because in one of the layers of the universe, he's there also. So here's the text from Canto 9, Chapter 1, Text 25. We'll find something about Lord Shiva with Uma at the foot of Mount Sumeru in a forest named Sukumara. Let's do that. And so this forest, Sukumara, is situated within Ilavrita. So here's the reference from Canto 9, Chapter 1. And in the north, this is directly the verse from Shukadeva Goswami. In the north, at the bottom of Mount Sumeru, is a forest known as Sukumara, where Lord Shiva always enjoys with Uma. He's got lots of places, lots of service. And the reference about Ilavrita Varsha is here in the 5th canto. 5th canto is describing the structure of the universe. Over there on the left, you see this is Mount Sumeru. Doesn't show it as golden, but it's golden. And you show different mountain ranges going this direction and that direction. And in between, like this one over here is Bharat Varsha, Hari Varsha. I get the other one. And so there's, Kim Purusha Varsha. Kim Purusha Varsha is where Hanuman is. And Hari Varsha. So the names are down at the bottom. Here's the golden Mount Sumeru. And these are, it doesn't show in this diagram below the mountain ranges, but it gives the names of the different Varshas. And this central one here is Ilavrita Varsha. So at the base of Sumeru, the 9th canto verse says, is a place where this mountain, there's this forest where Lord Shiva is with Uma. And just at the two of them, there's millions. Here it says 10 billion. Here's the text. This is directly the text from 5th canto Bhagavatam describing cosmology. In Ilavrita Varsha, Lord Shiva is always encircled by 10 billion maidservants. That's a lot. Of goddess Durga, who ministers to him, all of them. The quadruple expansion of the Supreme Lord is composed of Vasudeva, Pradyumna, Aniruddha, and Sankarshan. Sankarshan, the 4th expansion, is certainly transcendental, but because his activities of destruction in the material world are in the mode of ignorance, he is known as Tamasi, the Lord's form in the mode of ignorance. Lord Shiva knows that Sankarshan is the original cause of his own existence, and thus he always meditates upon him in trance. So we often see pictures of Lord Shiva in trance or in meditation. Upon what is he meditating? Now we know. He's meditating upon that which he is his source, Lord Sankarshan. Now, tomorrow at the Sunday Feast program, I'm not going to speak like this to the audiences, not this audience. It's new people, but I'm going to describe Lord Shiva's meditation upon Lord Sankarshan. Just the Leela part, not the Tattva part. And this reference in Canto 9, Chapter 1, has to do with King Sudyumna was wandering along Ilavrita Varsha, and all of a sudden his body transformed from a male to a female. Because the rule was, no one comes in the vicinity where Lord Shiva is with Parvati and these 10 billion maidservants without becoming female. His body, poof, became a female. Sex change without It's surgery. So here's a painting illustrating Lord Shiva underneath a tree in Varsha in this forest, and surrounded by, doesn't show 10 billion, but many maid servants of Uma. There's his trident leaning against the tree, and his meditation is upon Lord Sankarshan. Now, it's not Krishna, it's a four-armed form of Sankarshan. And this is referenced again by Jiva Goswami. I mentioned his name 4 times, here's the 5th time. One of his Sandarbhas is called Paramatma Sandarbha, and the very first text makes reference to this verse from the 5th canto, that Sankarshan and the Purusha, that means the expansion of the original Sankarshan, and the Purusha are the origin of Shiva, is confirmed by scripture, gives the Sanskrit directly from this verse, from 5th canto. Shiva worships Sankarshan, his source. That's what he's doing when he's sitting in meditation. So as I said, indicated, I'm going to do a quick review of these 7 abodes, and then we're going to stop talking to see if you have some points you'd like to discuss, and then we're going to have Kirtan. Take a few deep breaths, and then part 2. The part 2 is much shorter than part 1, I guarantee. So here's the list of 7. Where is the abode? Or we can say, where are the abodes? One of them is the Vaikuntha realm, that when we discussed Sadashiva Loka in Vaikuntha realm, with different scriptural references. The next one is going down. Below Haridam is Maheshdam. At the upper portion of Maheshdam, there's the place where Shiva Loka is, beyond the coverings of the universe, but below Haridam. It's the abode of the prototype Shambhu, or before there was even Devidam created, this Shambhu was existing, and that's where he existed, in this region. And those are the references. Kailash is in this realm by the kingdom of Kuvera, or the abode of Kuvera. Those are 3. Vittala, that's going down in the lower planetary regions, the 7 lower, number 2 of the 7 lower. We saw the diagram of where it is. Now we're going back up again, or there's actually at the very bottom of the universe, Mahakalapur, in that abode that's at the breaking place between Haridam and Maheshdam. There's another region, and there's the abode of Mahavishnu. That's also called Mahakalapur. Number 6, we didn't cover this one, I just mentioned it, but there's scriptural reference indicating that Rudra resides as the presiding deity according to one of the Sanskrit dictionaries, Yadavakosh, earth, water, fire, air, ether, sun, moon, and the performer of Vedic sacrifice. Rudra is situated there. And then finally, number 7, at the foot of Mount Sumeru, in the forest name is Sukumara, which is situated within Varsha. It took a lot of time for me to gather all this, and you're just hearing it for the first time, and it's probably brain puzzling. Yeah. So, there's 2 more slides, and then I think I want to do that and take a break, because the 2 slides connect to what I just described. This abode of liberation place. It's in the juncture of the Maheshdam at the very top, but below Haridam. So this abode of liberation, in this case known as Mahakaladam, it's in a marginal position in between this and that. It's not in the material, it's not in the spiritual realm. This is Prabhupada's purport. When a living entity is liberated from Devidam, but does not know of the opulence of Haridam, it's marginal. He's above this and he's not there yet. He is placed in Maheshdam, which is between the other two Dhams. The liberated soul does not get an opportunity to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead there. Therefore, although the Maheshdam is Lord Shiva's Dham, and above the Devi Dham, it is not the spiritual world. The spiritual world begins with Haridam or Vaikuntha Loka, so it's a marginal place. After Mahakala Dham comes the light. Remember the diagram. Lord Shiva is thus on both sides of Siddha Loka or the Brahmajyoti. On the lower side, Mahakala, he is Bhutanath, the leader of the atheistic class of men, while in the higher side, he's Sadashiva. In Sadashiva Loka, he worships Lord Sankarshan through singing, dancing, and other pastimes. Bhaktisiddhanta, that's the translator of this Brahma Samhita, in his commentary, he says that Shiva-dham includes both the lower and the upper, the darker region and the region of light. Last, sometimes it's a question, it's connected to what we just discussed. Can Lord Shiva grant liberation? And the answer is, according to Brihat Bhagavatamrita, Vishnu says, or it is said, having promised Lord Shiva a position even better than his own, Lord Vishnu deputed to both Lord Shiva and his wife the power to bestow liberation on his behalf. But there's a qualifier. Listen carefully to the qualifier. This liberation allows living entity to enter Mahesh Dham as described in the above slide. It's neither here nor there place. Or there's another scriptural reference, Itihasa Samuchaya. This Mahakalapur, the abode of liberation, sometimes also known as Mukti Pada, is the destination for certain liberated souls who are beyond the influence of Devi Dham, but do not yet know the glories of Vaikuntha. Vaikuntha is superior both to Mukti Pada and Mahesh Dham, the abode of Lord Shiva. So it's neither here nor there, liberation. There's a positive liberation, but there's a neither here nor there kind of liberation which they can grant to their worshippers. Complex. So going back to a starting point, Shiva-tattva is one of the most difficult tattvas to put your arms around or get a clear understanding about because of its complexity. And there's one more Brahma Samhita verse, if you remember back from the very beginning. One is just these three abodes, Devi Dham, Mahesh Dham, Devi Dham, Mahesh Dham, Haridam, Goloka Dham, 4 Dhams. That was verse 43. So we just covered verse 43, the different abodes of Lord Shiva indicated by that verse. And now next, if time permits, and if your patience is still not exhausted, we'll do a part 2 after Kirtan. And I'm surprised no one has gotten up and left because this is very, but you're all bright, college educated young ladies and men, and so it's nice to learn things you don't know about. You're used to that. What to speak of, the subject is Lord Shiva, and we'll be observing Shivaratri tomorrow, so we'll have a much better understanding of who it is we're honoring when we observe Shivaratri tomorrow. So let's see if there's some comments or discussion. I don't know if I can answer all the questions, but let's see what happens. You have.
This was like a lot of information overload. The question I had, like, what is the relevance of, like, why are we defining, like, you, as you mentioned in the beginning, like, the places for Lord Shiva, and I forgot the initial part, but why did we spend so much?
Why go over all that?
Yeah.
It's to understand Shiva-tattva. My objective when I started on this little project was Shiva-tattva. Like, who am I? That's Jiva-tattva. Who is the Supreme? Vishnu-tattva. And who is this Shiva personality? That's Shiva-tattva. So to describe his abodes helps us understand about functions that he performs. And he performs different functions in different abodes. He does this and he does that. He's a personality that does things in service to all of us. And one of those is he can deliver us, or he can bestow bhakti, or he can bestow material benedictions that entangle us further, or he can, he does all kinds of things depending upon those who approach him. So the reason, which is your question, why go through all this, is to understand the person who, in this world, many people, I've met many people born in India and growing up in India, for whatever the reason, the family or nearby was a Shiva temple or something, and they grew up with it. And now here we are doing Krishna Bhakti, and where does all of that history of my involvement in Lord Shiva, how do I handle that? Where do I place it? Who is he? When you step back and look at the big picture, and that's my intent. When I grew up, I didn't know anything about lots of things. I couldn't even pronounce the title Bhagavad Gita. What to speak of who is all this stuff? So it's not for my heart's position. It's not a conflict. For some people, it's a conflict. It's a big deal. Some people, it's not a big deal. It's just like, what's going on? So it's in our Vaishnav calendar because he's Vaishnavanam Yata Shambhu. So when we honor him, who is it that we're honoring? And why are we honoring him? And what's the best way to honor him? Supposing you don't know, then you don't do anything. Or you do what somebody that also doesn't know, and then you do what they do, and it's not really ideal. You're doing something. So the purpose of tattva is to open the heart to truths about life and reality, and how do we navigate our way through complexity of life and take the resources in the best way. That's why. Now, I've been just a response further to your question. I've been living a life of devotional service to Krishna for over 50 years. I've never gone into it like this 50 years later. Now, why am I doing it 50 years later instead of when I started? Because I didn't know what's what. And because Pyari said, hey, you're coming on Shivaratri, that's great. I thought, well, let's do it up. Is it important? Supposing you don't wire all these things. Are you at a loss? No. So then if you're not at a loss, then why bother? Because it just brings clarity to something that's muddy and murky, and it's at the end of the day, it strengthens my Krishna bhakti. I can say that. And my appreciation for our great acharyas and the scriptural references that they draw our attention to, that I never read Vayu Purana. I don't know what it says in Vayu Purana other than our acharyas. So I'm at the feet of our acharyas, hearing from them how to put this puzzle piece together with that puzzle piece and get the big picture. And now I'm much more aware of what the big picture is. And that, that my Krishna Bhakti has been strengthened. We have a question in the back. You have a strong voice. You don't need a microphone.
Thank you very much for detailed and this has to be the most well prepared session I've ever been involved in. So thank you so much.
It's all for you all. It's for you. It's a gift to all of you.
Yeah, my brother is a big worshipper of Lord Shiva, so I was just wondering if I could get a copy of this presentation and I can send it to him.
Well, here, I'll do you one better.
Okay.
The one better is, my thought is, because I spend so much time with this, my thought is, I'm going to prepare a document, like a paper, that says not only what's on the slide, but some of the other blah, blah stuff that I, just filled in with images and paintings, including what we're going to do tomorrow at the temple, maybe 2 parts, the Shiva-tattva and the Shiva-lila. So maybe it'll become more than a paper, I don't know.
Okay.
But I'd rather do that than just the PowerPoint because I think it'll be more comprehensive if it's in a written form with the blah, blah, blah fill-in stuff to explain how you get from this to that to the next one.
Thank you. I can collect that paper once it's ready from Ramananda Prabhu.
Yes. I'll sure to let him know. I'll let Pyari know too.
Okay. I wasn't really aware of all these abodes of Lord Shiva. The only abode I was aware of Lord Shiva was
Kailash.
Kailash, yeah. When you were explaining the Dhamas, you talked about, I'm not sure if I'm saying this right, but there was a demigod who was sitting on a Nandi.
Shambhu.
Shambhu. So, yes, Shambhu, traditionally we have been told, or my understanding is that Lord Shiva is Nandi. Nandi is Lord Shiva's
Carrier.
Right? So is Shambhu and Lord Shiva different? That's my first question.
Okay. Now, before you go to the next question, my answer to your question is terminology gets scrambled. One term means something here, the same term means something over there, and the same term means something over there. And then there's more terms, and they get all mixed up, they get all jumbled. So it's not that if that what you saw on the screen is Shambhu, and you've also heard Shiva, doesn't mean that Shiva doesn't ride Nandi. It's an aspect of Lord Shiva, and that same term Shambhu can be used in other aspects of Lord Shiva. But commonly, at least my experience so far, is that Shambhu term most commonly is the glance of Mahavishnu. And there's different other ways that the term Shambhu is also used, or the term Shiva may be used.
So we can consider Shiva as a glance of Lord Vishnu.
Shambhu.
Okay.
Traditionally, at least from my experience thus far.
Okay. Last question was, can Shiva be present in all his abodes at a single
Oh
time?
yeah, no problem.
Okay.
Now, there's features of Lord Shiva with cosmic annihilation, they're withdrawn, and there's features of Lord Shiva that after cosmic annihilation, they're not withdrawn. That's another thing, because he has abodes in different places and he expands in different ways. And there's so many universes. There's Lord Shiva in every universe. He can expand. He does expand.
So these are the abodes of Lord Shiva for just one universe.
Yeah, and there's similar ones in other universes.
All right.
Because there's so many universes.
Yeah.
He's a busy personality.
Yeah.
He has lots of service, but he responds to those who wish from him different things.
Thank you, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Someone else?
second question?
It's an online question. Gita Mala wants to share something. He wants you to read it, I guess.
Yeah. I remember clearly reading in the Bhagavatam about Shiva being able to give liberation, but never understood it is not pure liberation, but kind of bit here nor there in Mahesh Dham. That was a clear understanding from Maharaj's explanation.
Okay. There's more to come. Stay tuned. I mean, here's an example in response to what her comment. That the Daksha Yagya, and she burned herself up because she didn't want to have any bodily connection with Daksha. And then there was a big massacre and so forth and so on. And Lord Brahma went to the place where Lord Shiva was and pacified him. And he spoke very, very wonderfully, making it very clear that although Shiva is his son, he's vastly, vastly, vastly superior to Brahma in many ways, and he lists some of the many ways. And he speaks so nicely with such erudition that Lord Shiva becomes peaceful, although he was very, very angry. And then later, Uma becomes Parvati. She makes her appearance again, and etc., etc., etc. So it's in response to the comment that can Lord Shiva expand, and can Uma or Parvati expand? Definitely they can expand. They're tattvas. Anyone else? Okay. Looks like it's Kirtan time. Little. There's only 15 slides remaining. I covered 41. And there's 15 slides remaining. So I'm going to start. Microphone. That's text 45. We discussed for quite some time 43. And this one is about Lord Shambhu. And the comparison is as milk is to yogurt, so Krishna is to Lord Shiva. As milk and yogurt are nothing but milk transformed, but you can't take milk and you can't take yogurt and transform it back into milk. But from milk it can become yogurt. So Krishna, Govinda, is like the milk. Kshiram yatha dadhi, yogurt. Vikara vishesha yoga. Vikara means a change or transformation. A certain kind of transformation. So just as milk is transformed into curd by the action of acids, but yet the effect is neither the same as nor different from its cause, namely milk. So I adore the primeval Lord Govinda, of whom the state of Shambhu is a transformation for the performance of the work of destruction. So there's the milk, and milk becomes transformed. The commentary, here's, you've seen this painting before. Notice how quickly we're moving, isn't this nice? The non-distinction between Krishna and Shiva is established by the fact that just as milk treated with acid turns into curd, so Godhead, Krishna, becomes a subservient when he himself attains a distinct personality by the addition of a particular element of adulteration. So this is Bhaktisiddhanta's language. You know, adulteration generally doesn't have a nice sound to it. It's like, you know, bad. Add something bad to something good, and it's just not good anymore. It's partially bad by adulteration. Here's Bhaktisiddhanta's language. The said adulterating principle, there's three parts, is constituted of a combination of the stupefying quality of the diluting energy, that's Maya, the quality of non-plentitude, so it's not full, it's this marginal position, of the marginal potency. This marginal potency, non-plentitude thing is going to be explained in the next slide. And 3, a slight degree of the ecstatic cognitive principle of the plenary spiritual potency. So his language is very scientific, very elevated. So ecstatic and cognitive, this is Ananda and Chit potency of the Supreme Person. The ecstatic, the Ananda, and the cognitive, the Chit potency, Satchit potency, principle of the spiritual potency. The spiritual potency, that means Krishna's potency, his spiritual potency. So this is from text 45 commentary, going back to his commentary from text 33, a few verses ago. Goloka reveals itself to every jiva soul when he is under the spiritual cognitive potency joined to the essence of ecstatic energy. That is, if you want to realize God, you have to have knowledge. The cognitive potency of Krishna enables you to realize Krishna. But also the ecstatic energy, the Ananda potency, that's Radharani. So if there's the bestowal upon a living entity of these two, cognition and ecstasy, then one can realize Krishna or the spiritual realm. The ecstatic function of devotion is boundless and is surcharged with unalloyed transcendental knowledge. So devotional service carries these two parts. What's those two parts again? Knowledge and bliss. Devotional service carries with it knowledge and bliss. And the number 3 up above is a slight degree of those two. Ecstatic cum cognitive principle. So the fullness of Vishnu is not available in Shiva when he becomes transformed, when he becomes the guna avatar personality who functions in the material atmosphere. So we'll go back to those other, 7 different abodes of Lord Shiva. Several of them are in the not at all in contact with the material energy phase of life. But when he, Lord Shiva or Shambhu, contacts Pradhan, then there's some transformation that takes place. Vishnu is no longer Vishnu. Vishnu becomes, or the glance becomes transformed with a slight degree of the knowledge and bliss potency of the Supreme Lord. This is another way of looking at what I just, by the way, we only have 10 slides remaining. Another way of looking at this is from Rupa Goswami's writing, where there's a long list, 64 qualities that Krishna has. Some smaller number of them, 50 of the 64, living entities have in a small degree. And then, in addition to what the living entities have in a small degree, Lord Shiva and Brahma have more, 5 more qualities, but not as full as Vishnu has. So here's what that says. Besides all of the above mentioned 50 qualities, that's living entities, Lord Krishna possesses 5 more, which are sometimes partially manifested in the persons of Lord Brahma or Lord Shiva. These are qualities that Brahma and Shiva possess, that living entities don't possess. At least they're partially manifest in them. Changeless, all cognizant, ever fresh, Sat Chit Ananda forms, and possessing all mystic perfections. So, to some degree, Krishna possesses these in full. Brahma and Shiva possess them in some degree. But we're going to hear Lord Shiva possesses them greater than Lord Brahma possesses them. Here's the Brahma Samhita, text 49, purport. This, the divine nature, that's Krishna's nature, is present in a greater measure in Shambhu than in Brahma. The fundamental significance of the above is that the aggregate of 50 attributes belonging to the jiva are present in a fuller measure in Brahma, who possesses in a lesser degree 5 more attributes which are not found in the jiva. But in Shambhu, both the 50 attributes of the jivas, as well as the 5 additional attributes found in Brahma, are present in even greater measure than in Brahma. Clear? Generally speaking, this is another complicated thing, but generally speaking, not always, Brahma is a jiva. And Brahma has the greatest of all the qualities amongst the jivas. But greater than Brahma possesses more qualities than regular jivas because he's empowered. Lord Shiva has greater amount of those 50 qualities and a greater amount of the additional 5 qualities. He's the best amongst all. A very nice example is when Brahma comes to Lord Shiva. You see in the painting over here on the right, that's Brahma. He's gone to Lord Shiva after the Daksha Yagya, and there was devastation, etc. And surrounding Lord Shiva are many sadhus. Brahma comes to pacify him, and is pacifying Lord Shiva. He describes the superlative qualities that he has. I mentioned this earlier. This is just the nice painting that goes along with it. So he's looked up to by everyone, us, and all the devas, and Lord Brahma. He's at the top, quality-wise and every-wise. A big part of his activity has to do with destruction, but it also has something to do with creation. There's a nice verse amongst the Brahma Samhita verses, Shrishti, Sthiti, Pralaya, Sadhana Shaktireka, Chayeva Yasha Bhuvanani, Vivarti Durga. So Durga, along with Lord Shiva, have a lot to do with Shrishti, creation, Sthiti, maintenance, and Pralaya. She has her service, and she's largely engaged in assisting Lord Shiva, but she has her services also. Here's the commentary. With creation and destruction. Shambhu, in pursuance of the will of Govinda, works in union with his consort Durga Devi by his own time energy. The time is the destructive principle, right? We discussed that. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Kalosmi, time I am, the destroyer of all things. So that agent of destruction is Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva has a feature of time energy that assists him in the destruction activities. Govinda manifests himself as Guna Avatar in the form of Shambhu, who is the separated portion of Govinda, imbued with the principle of subjective plenary portion. So here's Bhaktisiddhanta's language again. Subjective plenary portions makes my head spin. Subject, object, like in grammar, in verb, and sometimes predicates too. So the subject is the worshipper, and the worshipped is Krishna. The servitor is the subject, and the served is Krishna. So he's the subjective portion. Subjective plenary means complete. That's easy. So could you say it in another language? Sure, you could say it in another language. It's just he uses his language because it's very, very scientific. It's not negotiable. It's very clear. You may not understand it, but it's very clear what it means and what it doesn't mean. So Shambhu is a separated portion of Govinda. Separated portion means he's not the fullness. So there's an expansion, but it's a not him, and it's a part of it's less than the fullness of him. Separated portion, imbued with the principle of his subjective plenary portion. So it's just saying he's in this marginal position. In simple language, he's neither Jiva nor Vishnu. He's in this in-between position, and his abode is in an in-between position also. Shambhu performs the work of destruction of the material world, we heard. It's one of the things he does. Some descriptions, he's at the bottom of the universe in 11 Rudras. Some description, when the flames come from the mouth of Anantashesh, right on time for destruction, he dances and the flames engulf the universe. So that's one of the explanations or expansions. Another is when it's time for destruction, directly from the body of Sadashiva, Sankarshan, from Sankarshan comes the expansion, the Rudra expansions. Those are not identical. One might say, well, wait a minute, this is contradictory. Is it this or is it that? And it can be both, for that matter. And the function, aside from where Lord Shambhu appears from, or Rudra appears from, is the principle of destruction, carrying the time energy of Lord Shiva to help bring about destruction, because time destroys things, even good things. Time destroys things. 5 more slides and we're done. Some of them are just pictures. You were very patient with me, thank you. So here's something directly from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 12. The creation of Rudra from between the eyebrows of Brahma, as the result of his anger, the anger was he asked his 4 sons, the Kumaras, to assist him in filling up the universe with good praja, and they said, no thanks, Dad, we want to remain brahmachari. So he needed help. So he became angry. From his brow came Lord Shiva. Generated from the mode of passion, partly touched by ignorance, is very significant. In Bhagavad Gita 3:37, the principle of Rudra is described. Krodha, or anger, is the product of kama, or lust. So one is ignorance, another is passion, which is the result of the mode of passion. When lust and hankering are unsatisfied, the element of krodha appears, which is the formidable enemy of the conditioned soul. The most sinful and inimical passion is represented as ahankara, or false, egocentric attitude of thinking oneself to be all in all. And guess who's in charge of that one? Rudra. Such an egocentric attitude on the part of the conditioned soul, who is completely under the control of the material nature, is described in Bhagavad Gita as foolish. The egocentric attitude is a manifestation of the Rudra principle in the heart, wherein krodha, or anger, is generated. So Rudra has a destructive function within creation. He doesn't always destroy, but time is always destroying things that come into being. Time destroys things. Nice painting of Lord Shiva doing his meditation. And Lord Shiva is very merciful. He's especially merciful. There's a section in Canto 4, Chapter 24, I've been pretty involved in this of late, where the sons of King Prachini, they're 10 in number, they're called the Prachetas, they were also asked to assist their father in creating good praja, to help Brahma fill up the universe. It's very early in the creation. And in the early yuga of creation, in Satya Yuga, the process for achieving spiritual perfection is meditation. So their reply to their father was, yes, Dad, we'll help you. You're making a request, we'll be glad to do what you're requesting. But first we have to qualify ourselves to produce good praja. So their plan to produce good praja was to do meditation for 10,000 years. Because it's Satya Yuga, so they live a longer time, it's like 10 years, to do a tapasya. And they were planning to do their meditation underwater. Means no cheating. You suspend the life airs, and if you take breaths of air, you're in trouble. So they were planning to enter into the sea. You see the painting. And as they were about to enter into the sea, Lord Shiva came before them, surrounded by hosts of other Gandharvas and Apsaras, etc., and offered his appreciation. He said, Lord Shiva says to them, I know who you are. You're sons of King Prajini, and I know what your purpose is also. You're going to do some meditation, and I also know that you're great devotees of Lord Vasudeva, and so am I. So I'd like to share with you some nice stotras, some prayers that you can recite while you're doing your meditation underwater. And he gives them a number of prayers, and they do that. There are lots of education involved in those prayers, but he reveals that his worshipable deity is Sankarshan. And off he goes, and they go underwater and do their meditation for 10,000 years, and after some time, Lord Vishnu comes right into the sea. They're at the bottom of the sea, and here he comes. And they offer obeisances, and there's some exchange with them. So there's prayers by which those who are very qualified can achieve bhakti. He doesn't always give bhakti because that's not always what people want. He's ashutosh, so he extends what people want. But he wants to give what especially he's very happy to give something that is the utmost benefit for his devotees. Just like, as parents, some of you have children, some of you will have children. When you have children, you're very happy to supply them whatever their needs are. And it's especially nice when they have a spiritual inclination and you have the resource to give them that which nourishes their spiritual inclination. That's the greatest happiness, and Lord Shiva is like that. He's the head of one of the sampradayas, one of the 4 principal sampradayas, Rudra Sampradaya, and he liked giving bhakti. But he gives it to those who want it. He may give other things to those who want other things. 2 more slides and we're done. Dear Lord, this is from those prayers. You are the origin of the subtle material ingredients, the master. Something happened. As well as the master of disintegration, so master of integration, as well as the master of disintegration, the predominating deity named Sankarshan. And the last slide, this is a little message about the crescent moon that we see often worn by Lord Shiva. So here's a little explanation. Balachandra, the crescent moon, was produced from the churning of the milk ocean. Because of its cooling effect, Balachandra was offered to Lord Shiva to wear on his head since he was feeling dizzy from having drunk the poison. In case you wanted to know. Ta-da! So, my plan, again, I'm going to modify some things. Just by going through this with all of you, I want to modify some things. And in due course, I don't know, I don't have any urgency, but I would like to have a nice little document that contains this for people that are interested. People that aren't, that's okay too. And then tomorrow, I think whoever attends the class tomorrow will appreciate, is more Leela and the exchanges of Lord Shiva with different forms of Krishna, Ram, Sankarshan, and Lord Chaitanya. That with a lot of work involved in all of that also. So any comments, or we're ready for prasadam?
What I learned was Shiva is easy to please and he is very merciful.
Yeah.
But you showed us he is very angry and he is very egoistic person.
Son knows best.
I want to watch you. Okay, I'll stand over there.
No. Thank you. So what I know is everybody says Shiva is very, very merciful and very easy to please. But in these slides, we presented more of he's having more ego and more anger and more arrogant.
Well, he's a force of destruction for sure. Rudra, force of destruction.
Yeah.
So there's got different features. You have very diverse personality in many ways. Lots of services. Yes, up front we have something.
I think this is a little technical, but
The whole thing was a little technical.
But the term plenary portion, Srila Prabhupada uses it a lot. And for me, I was just thinking that plenary means complete.
Yes.
And portion means a part. So can we understand the term plenary portion to mean that the part is complete?
Yes, here to keep it simple. It's best to keep it simple. Shh. There's a term angsa and kala. Angsa is a plenary portion. So the plenary portion, the expansions of Krishna are plenary portions, but there are qualities that Krishna has that they don't have, and the remaining qualities that Krishna they have in a lesser degree, but they have the 60 of the 64 qualities in a lesser degree. So plenary portion, called angsa. And then there's kala, which he translates as a portion of a plenary portion. And that's just the language. Bhaktisiddhanta had his, Prabhupada had his. It means the Purusha avatars, the forms of Vishnu that function in this world. They're involved not in the spiritual activities, they're involved in material creation activities. And they're called kala, to differentiate from angsa or svangsa. So angsa or svangsa is the plenary portion, and kala is the portion of a plenary portion. Those means the Vishnu forms exhibit less than those plenary portions or the expansions of Krishna in the spiritual world. They exhibit less of the fullness of the personalities in the spiritual world because they're focused on material creation. That's a simple answer. Yes. Plenary and portion sound contradictory, but so that's how we can understand those terms.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj.
Okay. Thank you all very much. Very patient. Nobody left. At least I didn't see anybody leave. Now you have prasadam, and I brought some mahaprasadam.